All right, you guys hear me okay? All right, very cool. I'm super excited to be here. I remember when this was just literally 4 rows of chairs, and it was awesome. It was actually my first ever speaking engagement 8 years ago, the first time we did this. But we'll talk about more of that. I got some great little photos from the first Monktoberfest up here, so this will be great. All right, so a little bit about who I am. My name is Greg Avola. I live in New York City, but I'm from Massachusetts, so I'm a huge Red Sox fan, so absolutely. I'm so excited. I'm going to be able to watch the games, actually, because I can't watch them in New York because of stupid rules. Can't get Nesson. I really hate the yes commentators. I'm really sorry about that. So I'm the co-founder and CTO for Untappd. I'm responsible primarily for our consumer division, which is a very, corporate way of saying our apps and not our business products. I previously was a senior web developer at ABC News, fighting against fake news, so that was fun. I love beer, big data, and JavaScript. My wife and my son, I forgot to add those on there. That's pretty bad. Yikes. And my claim to fame, if Untappd, is not I had 8 seconds cameo on Man vs. Food. Who's ever watched Man vs. Food before? All right, your homework is to go home and find that 8 seconds, because I don't remember where it is. No, I had a line in there that said, I don't think they can finish that pizza, it looks too big. It took me 8 times to get it right. My wife was also on the show as well, but her part was cut, and mine was put in there, so that was pretty embarrassing. So I want to clear something up. I do like beer. There's a lot of beer news right now happening. I cannot run for any Congress positions because it's all logged here, and everyone can see it, but I do like beer very much, as you can see. So who's heard of Untappd before? Raise your hand if you've heard of Untappd. Wow, I remember the first Monktoberfest, there was like 2 people, and Steve was one of them. My mother's going to be very happy with that response. So Untappd, for lack of better words, is a social network for sharing beers and discovering beers. You can find out where to get them. You can log the beers you're having. This is a nice little map of some of our verified venues in the Portland area. You can also run some digital achievements and gamify the system. So it's a great way to kind of keep track, get updates, and kind of expand your palette. One of the crazy things is that most people don't know is that when we built this thing 8 years ago, I did not even like beer. I didn't like anything to do with it. And it's kind of crazy to hear that, but we felt that there was a very niche area of beer that wasn't represented in an online fashion. So you have things like what we're doing during our lunch break, talking with people, drinking beer, but that really wasn't online. And we took the idea of Foursquare, of checking into places, and added more of an important feature of it, of expanding on that and making drinking socially, which is our tagline, a much more relevant thing. So that's what we are. So a little bit about our growth here. Basically, I love this slide. I use this in every presentation. It's fantastic. So when we did the Monktoberfest number 1, we had 18,000 users. That was 8 years ago. So we're almost close to 6 million users now. I actually had to do a double take when I ran the numbers. I said, I didn't even know we had that many. So that's fantastic. We have 650 million check-ins that's happened over the course of the 8 years that we've been running this, which is awesome to see. 192 million beer photos. I must specify that. We have problems like everybody else. I'm not going to comment anymore on that. So some of the check-in stats for September, we have around 16,000 beers checked in per hour on Untappd. I'm not sure what that says about our culture, but I'm not really complaining because that goes to my bottom line, which is very good. So, it's a good thing, I think. And 4.2 million photos were uploaded last September. Again, beer-related photos. So really cool stuff. So we talked a little about our business platform, just a quick overview of what we do because it has a consumer focus as well. We allow bars and restaurants to subscribe to this service that allows them to do print menus, digital displays, and also other analytics for their people coming in their door. It helps the end user because you can subscribe to these venues and get alerts when new beers get on draft. So if you're a big fan of some of these venues around you and you can subscribe to them whenever they get a new beer, you can go there and automatically know what the tap list is. This is one of the dreams we had of Untappd when we first started. We wanted you to be able to find beer accurately. We can use algorithms right now to figure out where beer is happening, but if anyone's heard of Treehouse Brewing Company, they're a pretty amazing brewery out of Massachusetts, and their beer gets around everywhere in the Northeast, but it affects our algorithm so much because there's so many beer shares with it. We basically tell you it's available everywhere you go, which is not true. So this gives you an opportunity to kind of see real-time information as they're happening around you. So this year we actually translated the app into 4 different languages, and I pulled some of these awesome reviews. Now the rule of thought is you never read app reviews. You don't ever read them because they'll make you feel like you're the crappiest person you ever developer, you're the worst ever. But these were some great ones that I found. My favorite one is the one on the top. App is made by unicorns. That's a really cool idea. I like it a lot. Also right here on the bottom, the social media app to beat all social media. Untappd is life. Great slogans there. And some of the other translations here, we translated the app into Brazil, to Portuguese, to German, and Spanish over the last couple of months. So it's a great way to kind of see growth outside the United States from that perspective. So I want to turn it back a little bit. I don't know if you can read this, but this is the first email I ever spoke with Steve about Monktoberfest back in 2001. May 11th was the first time that he spoke to me. He said, look, I'm having a conference. I'd love for you to be part of it. I don't know if he thought I was somebody different or maybe had a better background, but I had never even heard of anything to do with Red Monk. I had never spoke at any conference before. I just made this little app in my basement. I thought he was maybe confused, so I'm like, all right, I get to go to Portland, Maine, never been there, let's do it. But behind the scenes of that email, I was scared beyond belief. I had to go talk to a bunch of people about this app for the first time, so I was very, very nervous, but it turned out pretty well. This is me back in 2001 doing an interview right outside of this building over here with Tom. That's also my first interview too. I will not tell you how to find this clip on YouTube, so you can find it on your own. You know, if Monktoberfest turned a lot of corners for me, both personally with my career and also with Untappd. After Monktoberfest, I got a lot of emails from inquiries for other speaking engagements and things of that nature. I actually got someone who contacted me that wanted me to write a book about mobile app development, and I said, you know what, that's crazy. But it actually happened. And so it's incredible that this conference is going on for 8 years. I couldn't be more excited about it. As evident in this picture, that's not me, but it's an excited kid. Basically, the whole premise of what this community has brought together for this conference has given me a lot of opportunities in life, both career, personally, and for Untappd, but it's pretty awesome to see that growth. So now I kind of want to talk a little bit about what Untappd was all about, how we started, what we did. This is a picture of Untappd version 1.0. It's beautifully designed with colors that match the interface very smoothly with your eyes. So basically, we launched in October of 2010. So we launched October 22nd of October 10 with this web app. So back in 2010, the word web app was like this foreign thing that you'd never heard of before. This was in the browser. You go to untappd.com, and it would redirect you to m.untappd.com. That was a cool thing to do back then. And that's what it was. No notifications, no camera, no ratings. It was just a simple way to kind of keep track of what you're having and where you're having it. We were a 2-man team, and we're doing it part-time. So I worked at the time I worked at Morgan Stanley and KPMG doing audit stuff, whittling away my life, working 10-hour days in a hotel. Funny story though, when I left the hotel, they did a movie theme where they all clap as you leave. That was me, pretty much. I lived there so much. But we're working on it part-time. It was an amazing experience to kind of see the growth of it. We're using jQuery, because remember guys, there was no Angular, there was no React back then. There wasn't even jQuery mobile. So we were just basically using jQuery and returning the HTML from the server. There was no RESTful API. That stuff's not cool, right? You know, this is cool, you know? So it was pretty awesome. The cool thing about this was, on day one, we were able to hit iOS, Android, WebOS. How about any Palm Pilot fans out there, all right? And BlackBerry 6, amazing, right? All on day one. We had some competitors that were out there that had native apps in one of those languages. Back then, you didn't really do an app for both environments. It would be for one or the other. So we were able to kind of steal some of those users on day one, especially as the web app isn't the most sexiest thing on there. It helped us get a lot of users from day one in terms of growing the platform. And we also had social integration, sharing with Facebook and Twitter, so you can brag how much beer you drink, which is fun for everybody. So the growth was great. We saw a lot of traction. So October, this coming year would have been the year that we actually did Monktoberfest for the first time. And you can see the growth was pretty good, close to 18,000 users are growing. We're really excited about that. But we had a problem, and people really couldn't discover our content very well. And we were looking at ways to expand our app to more usage. We knew the app store is where we wanted to be, but we didn't have the expertise to actually develop a native app on both sides. Remember, we're also doing it part-time too, so we want to be able to update it as well. So we wanted to be able to use our web developer skills to figure out how we can get our app into the store, how we can get it in a way back in 2011 that works for everyone. This was the biggest problem that we saw that most people that we talked to when we went to conferences or bars is that you literally would talk to them about Untappd and they get really excited about it and you say, just open up your browser, go to untappd.com, and where did you go? I lost you. People just weren't connecting the idea that a web app is just something on the browser and not necessarily in the store. This concept has changed over the years, but back when we first started, it was app or nothing. If you weren't in the app store, you didn't exist from an app perspective. So we had to change this problem. We also wanted code sharing. Like I mentioned before, we wanted to be able to use the same code across multiple platforms and be able to help it be able to accelerate the process. Being a two-man team, the only developer, that was the only way we were able to get the features out to users quickly. So over time, we developed a lot of things, and we currently use what we call Ionic right now. Who's heard of Ionic from a development perspective? Awesome. So basically, Ionic is what we use right now to allow us to bridge the gap between the native and the website. So Ionic is a CSS JavaScript layer that sits on top of your app, allows you to use custom components and standard components for your UI while leveraging the Cordova backend so you could use it for PhoneGap and things like that. So I get in a lot of debates with people about this nowadays. Remember, when we did this back in 2011, 2012, React Native didn't exist. There wasn't any other stuff there is today. A lot of people come up to me and say, hey, man, why don't you just convert it to React Native? And my honest opinion right now is I really firmly believe in the web. We started with the web. We think it's the biggest marketplace for your product. Even if there is no really web store out there, the web is still the biggest place for your app to be. And we can easily iterate our code and share it, both on the app side and also our .com properties too. So it's a really great way for us to iterate stuff, have components that we can share. Obviously supported Windows Phone. We did have a Windows Phone app out there, believe it or not. We no longer do, but that's that. So we also have HTML, CSS, JavaScript solution, like I mentioned. It's run off the Angular framework. The latest one is Angular 5, which is great performance. And it also can be run in your browser and tested. So we're using all of our skills that we have today to build these really functional apps. So after we done that, this is what our app looked like. It was pretty smooth on Android. We had our top navigation on the top. We had some check-in buttons. It looked a lot better than it looked that first screen that were happening. So we're like, we're really good. This is fantastic. This is awesome. And then something amazing happened. We are approached by a company called NextGlass. They're a company out of Wilmington, North Carolina. Back in December of 2015, they were a wine and beer app that used a lot of chemical analysis for rating beers. And we were always wanting to work on this project full time. Like I mentioned, we've been doing it for part-time for 5.5 years. And we saw the growth, and we said, we have a family. We can't just kind of eat ramen noodles for the rest of our life here. We can't just go to Techstars. It wasn't for us. A lot of VCs came to us and said, you're not on it full time. That means you're not dedicated to the project. And I said, ask my wife. She knows I'm dedicated. I'm barely even in the house. So we were approached by them, and they had a lot of capital, a lot of funds that they raised, but their product wasn't catching on in terms of traction. Their product required you to have the beer already tested in their chemical system. They've developed an algorithm. So they had to buy the beer first to actually get into the platform. That just slowed down the growth of their user base. So we had a lot of users with no capital. So we decided to merge companies and not do a straight-up acquisition, but merge and keep the Untappd brand intact. So a lot of people say, well, you got bought out. Why aren't you flying the corporate jet here and getting us all into another area? That wasn't the situation. We merged together, and the idea was that we had kept the creative vision of what Untappd's all about. Any acquisition or merge you hear about today, the biggest question is, well, what happens to the company after they merge? What happens to the co-founders? And we still have creative rights and creative control over the Untappd brand. It was very important that maintained with us, because if we weren't able to maintain that, I don't think it would be the way it is today. So that's a very important feature there. Also allowed us to go full-time on the project. We hire additional staff. Believe it or not, we have 90 people working on Untappd today. We went from 2 to 90 in the span of 3 years. It's still crazy when I say that number. We're also hiring, by the way. Plug if anyone wants to check us out. We have financial backing, and our goal is to really disrupt the beer industry. That was one of the things we talked about before. Our headquarters is located in Wilmington, North Carolina now. You may have seen Wilmington on the news for the Hurricane Florence that just happened and went through us. We were actually shut down for a week. Our first floor of our office was flooded, but everyone is safe in our company, which is a good thing. Didn't think that, I thought Untappd would make Wilmington popular, not the hurricane. I guess I lost in that avenue. All right, a little bit about the infrastructure side, because people are curious about what we run, how we do it. This slide hasn't changed in a few years. The biggest thing that's changed in the last 2 weeks, actually, is that big, beautiful three-letter word on your left side. We were actually hosted on Rackspace for about 7.5 years. We just migrated to AWS 2 weeks ago. So we're super excited about being part of their platform, the ecosystem. We're a traditional Lambda stack besides that. We use MySQL and a variant of it called MariaDB to power all of our databases as primary. We also use Redis, Mongo, Elasticsearch, pretty much the alphabet soup of when it comes to these type of things. The main difference between us and a lot of other startups is that we don't use technology just because it's cool and flashy. A lot of people say, well, if you use MongoDB, why are you using MariaDB? And the answer is because it doesn't do what we want to do for every situation. So we use what works best for us. Of course, there's a lot of replication things that have to be taken back, especially with Elasticsearch and Redis. But at the same time, it helps us get things faster. So for example, Redis stores all of our counts. So if you open up the app and you look at your distinct beer count, that's where it's stored in Redis. We're not doing select count queries every time you load it for performance reasons. Elasticsearch, we don't use it for search, we use it for analytics, which is kind of weird, but that's what we use it for. And Iron.io, has anyone heard of Iron.io before? Yeah, they're a message queue platform. We use it for all of our cloud workers. Google Functions is a competitor product to that. We've been using them for a little while, so that's kind of the structure of the infrastructure side. All right, so one of my favorite things about Untappd is the data that we get from Untappd. That's one of the things we've always thought would be the big ticket item for us. And with 650 million check-ins over the last couple of years, I think we have a lot of data. I could be wrong. So what I did was I pulled some data on the top trending beers in Portland. So if you've never been to Portland before, these are some beers you should definitely be checking out for sure. I've had, well, I can ask the app, it can tell me, but I can tell from my memory here that I've had at least 4 out of the 5 on this list. The only one I have not had is the Lone Pine at the bottom. But basically, we ran an algorithm to determine the number of unique users that have checked into these beers in the area you see on your right-hand side here in the last 30 days. And that is what's come back. If you have not had anything from Bissell Brothers, they are an amazing brewery, very close to this location here. The Substance is one of my favorite beers. We used to smuggle it back from Maine to New York all the time. It was great. And if you haven't been to Maine Brewing Company, dinner and lunch are amazing, but they're hard to find in terms of distribution. So that's really cool. Next stat, this is kind of a smaller view here, but this is an interesting kind of analysis. I like doing this on my conferences to show different types of places in the world and where they drink. So this is a map or a bar chart of the total number of check-ins within a 20-mile radius of this location in the last 30 days, averaged out by the hours that drinking has occurred. So the goal here is to figure out when is the most popular to drink, what time in Portland over the last 30 days averaged out. And it looks like you drink all the time, pretty much, which is pretty cool. So it looks like from almost like 1 p.m. all the way out to 7 p.m. That's pretty good. So the question people ask a lot is, well, how does that compare to places like New York City, for example? It's the city that never sleeps, right? So we should have all this data kind of skyrocketing up like this. Portland should be nothing like New York City. It kind of isn't, but we start later. You guys drink all the time. We just start at 7 p.m., and then we die after that, or at 8 o'clock, we're done. So pretty cool area in Portland to drink compared to New York City, which is a lot more volume, but the time doesn't really mesh well. My favorite part of this is what's happening right here on 6 a.m., 7 a.m. Who are those people, and what happened to their night? I want to know, because that's interesting to see that. Back on the Portland side, it's pretty flat, so that's, maybe you're back checking there, but there's some significant spikes here at like 7 or 8 in the morning. Do you really not like going to work or something, or that's just your medicine there? But anyway, that's some of the stats there. So that's it I have for today. I appreciate all the support that everyone's given at this event. I can't say much how much it means for me to be here today, 8 years after we did this for the first time. So hope you enjoyed the talk, and I guess I'm the only person between you and the beer at this point. So, all right, thank you very much.